We have some big breaking news. This is about the president's national security team. U.S. National Security Advisor Mike Waltz is expected to depart his post. This is according to numerous media reports citing anonymous U.S. officials. We want to note that NBC News has not independently confirmed these reports. However, Waltz would be the first high-profile departure from the Trump administration if this proves to be true. Kelly O, you first here, because we know that Waltz was at the White House this morning. He certainly played a major, if not somewhat bumbling role in the Signal chat debacle. So walk us through what happened there.
Well, certainly Mike Waltz appeared on television from the North Lawn today, so he was in good stead at that point. And now the president has a separate event that's going on in the Rose Garden. Our colleagues who are there have not seen him physically present there. Typically, the National Security Advisor is a very visible presence. And Mike Waltz was the person who acknowledges that he invited a journalist into a Signal chat, an encrypted but commercial tool for messaging, in advance of the strike on Houthis in Yemen, and that led to a great deal of embarrassment and controversy for the administration. He's a former member of Congress, and so this departure has also cost Republicans in the House a key seat, that, of course, from the beginning of the time of the administration, when the margin is so narrow. So to now not have him in this position as the National Security Advisor, if that is, as we expect that he would depart soon, that, of course, cost the Republican Party. So the relationship between the president and the National Security Advisor is a very close one in terms of the needs. It has certainly been a fraught one in the sense of the concerns that Waltz has brought to this. Now, in the first administration for President Trump, he went through a number of national security advisors. Unclear who might step in, but we have certainly seen that in the national security space, and Andrea covers this so closely, you've got a Secretary of State in Marco Rubio. You have an ambassador in Witkoff, Steve Witkoff, who has a long relationship, personal and business relationship with the president as a New York developer and a real estate developer. I believe he lives in Florida now. And he is someone who has been deployed in many key areas. So one question would be, would he have a different role? So these are all the things that we need to report out as we go forward. But this would be the first significant departure of a close administration official that's right in the president's inner orbit.
100% and 101 days in, no less. So, Andrea, it's a somewhat fragile time to try to shake up the national security team. Give us a sense of how this could impact U.S. foreign policy.
Well, this is enormous because it is the National Security Advisor who is supposed to coordinate the so-called interagency process. And one of the criticisms of this second Trump administration is that there hasn't been as much process. There's been a lot of action, but we don't see the fact that it's really coordinated among the teams the way, with policy that comes up, is analyzed, is debated, the military weighs in, and then it goes to the president for a decision. So Mike Waltz has not occupied the role that has typically been occupied by a national security advisor. Of course, with these envoys, with Secretary Rubio, with others, principally Steve Witkoff, of course, the most powerful of the envoys. Others, Rick Grinnell, are in the mix. So it's been complicated. He was also targeted by Laura Loomer. That should not be overlooked. And so is his deputy, Alex Wong. So he is supposedly also on thin ice, if not also already out, to be targeted by Laura Loomer. We already saw that some of his deputies, some of his, numbers 3s and 4s, were fired a couple of weeks ago, the day after Loomer was in the Oval Office, improbably for a meeting. This conspiracy theorist who has questioned 9/11, whether it was an inside job, all of these things. So a lot of people thought he was going to quit then, because if your people are being fired by some outside conspiracy theorist, how can you be the National Security Advisor? He was the organizer, of course, of that Signal chat, but it was Pete Hegseth who gave what were the secret details, that should have been classified and would ordinarily have been classified, but certainly should not have been, discussed on an open, public chat. So it's Pete Hegseth that everyone in the national security field believes Republicans and Democrats should have been the one blamed for that. And so far, he's been immune and has the president's support. But this is a real blow And now the question will be on a successor.
Yeah. But again, we're relative to Hegseth so far. We'll see if it lasts. I just want to let all of you know that we're keeping a close eye on the Rose Garden at the White House, where the president's participating in a National Prayer Day service. He's offering prepared remarks right now. And of course, if he pivots and speaks at all about the reported departure about Mike Waltz, we'll take you there as well. But let's bring in White House correspondent Peter Baker, former State Department spokesperson Ned Price as well. Peter, you first here. You and I have had discussions about whether or not Mike Waltz was on some shaky ground after the Signalgate debacle. Had we seen him being left out of key meetings since Signalgate?
Well, look, Signalgate obviously brought to the fore the dysfunction at the NSC, but that's not really what has Donald Trump concerned. Waltz was already battling, in effect, the MAGA wing of the Trump circle because he wasn't sufficiently MAGA in their view. He's too close to mainstream republicanism. He believes in a strong, posture towards Russia. He is not as, enamored of these talks with Iran on the nuclear deal. He's considered to be somebody who isn't necessarily, according to the MAGA crowd, on board with Trump's policy. So Signalgate obviously then brings to the fore, an embarrassment for the president that he doesn't like. He doesn't like the coverage that comes from that. He doesn't seem concerned as much about the fact that it was an unsecure communication about military plans, so much as the fact that Mike Waltz had Jeff Goldberg, the journalist's phone number, in his phone in the first place. That seemed to be a bigger knock against Mike Waltz with the president than it was that Mike Waltz wasn't secure in the discussion of this sensitive information.
Peter, Andrea was mentioning Laura Loomer. Do you think that she had influence in this decision ultimately?
Yeah, Laura Loomer is, in fact, the avatar at this point for the MAGA wing of the party, looking to purge people they consider to be insufficiently loyal or insufficiently committed to the president's agenda as they define it. And she did target Waltz and Alex Wong, as Andrea just said, his deputy. We've seen her success so far at purging other people who were considered to be, again, less than loyal enough. People from the NSC underneath Waltz who were pushed out. The director of the National Security Agency, the spy agency, was pushed out because he was seen as being, having worked in, with people that the president doesn't like. And so, yeah, I think that's her voice is one of many that's important to the president when it comes to this issue of, who's sufficiently loyal for his team.
Ned, could Vladimir Putin take advantage of the turmoil that Andrea was outlining must surely be forthcoming as a result of this?
Alex, it's a safe bet that he, at the very least, will try. And I say that because the National Security Council, where I served for about 3 years, by my quick calculations, about 12 times as long as Mike Waltz, is really the epicenter of the foreign policy and national security decision-making process. This is the body that, in a normal administration at least, gets all of the departments and agencies quite literally around the table in the Situation Room, discusses, debates, and ultimately adjudicates decisions, or in some cases, in the most sensitive cases, in the most consequential cases, tease them up for the president of the United States. And that's especially important in this administration because there is really one decision maker in this administration, and they depend much less on process. They depend much more on the whims of any given day and what comes out of President Trump's mind or mouth on at any given moment. And so the National Security Council carries an even greater amount of weight in this administration. And when you have the level of turmoil that we've seen within the broader national security community, but specifically within the National Security Council, with Laura Loomer appealing personally to the president to fire multiple NSC officials, and bafflingly, concerningly, the president agreeing. This was a few weeks ago, and now I have a sneaking suspicion this is sort of an aftershock of that Laura Loomer conversation. We know that Alex Wong, Mike Waltz's deputy, and Mike Waltz himself were on her target list. And now, just a few weeks later, they are out. And to me, that suggests that the conspiracist fringe within the MAGA movement is having even greater influence within the Trump White House, including on the most sensitive, the most consequential personnel decisions. That's something that should worry. It's something that should startle all of us. And it is something that will be taken as a boon, as a gift to people like Vladimir Putin.